Hi, I'm Colin Davis of ShadowTechAlchemy.com, and this is a video that I'm making for anyone who might be interested in having a conversation with me. Maybe I've asked to be on your podcast, or maybe I've asked you to be on my podcast, or whatever. But this is going to be an unlisted video where I just in a quick and concise way, I talk about what my subjects are, and you can get an idea of whether or not you want to talk to me, whether or not this is your field or your area of interest, and whether or not your audience, if you have an audience, whether they would be interested in this. So my subject area mainly, I'll break it up into two sides of this. One is just all the theory about the shadow. Carl Jung's shadow, the dark side of the psyche, and I've created a holistic system for understanding the shadow through the Jungian system and through all kinds of others that I've kind of overlaid together to give you this meta theory. And I've put that in my books, and I'll talk about those in a minute. So this is all about the shadow of the psyche. It's about shadow work. It's about the relationship between the shadow and evil, and all of this. And so there's that. And then there's also my relationship with Melissa Mari. And I had a 12-year-long, very, very deep, what I call alchemical relationship with a woman named Melissa Mari. And we did all this shadow work together in our relationship. And we had a highly conscious, very deep, very, very transparent relationship. And so I have that experience now too. And I'll tell you about Melissa and how that happened and all of that in a moment. But those are kind of the two sides. And so if you are more on the, maybe both sides are interesting to you, I'll talk to both. I think probably they go together. But some people might be more interested in the theory side, and some people might be more interested in the relationship work. But those are kind of the two sides of the coin here. So maybe I should just, I've done this in other videos, but I just want to be very clear here. And the shadow is the dark side of the human mind, the human psyche. It's everything that we can't tolerate about ourselves, our lower nature, our more primal nature. It's all of our ancient and primal drives, plus the leftovers of wounding and all of that, and everything that we don't want to work with, we don't want to look at, we don't want to talk about, we don't want to admit that we have these things, whether it's rage and aggression, or whether it's grief or guilt or shame, or whether it's drives for control and power and narcissism or any of this. We don't want to admit that we have this, and so we repress it down into what Carl Jung called the shadow. And then from there, it just grows in power, and then we have to release it some way, and so we project it out into the world. We demonize other people, we scapegoat other people, we do this personally, we do it collectively in groups, and then we release our shadow material out into the world. We displace it when we end up having to do something. We have to take some kind of action. And we go to war with other people, or we do all kinds of so-called shady things, or what we call evil. And so you could say, and I'd say this is very accurate, that what we call evil, the kinds of behaviors that we call evil, are the external side of the human shadow. They are the result of the projection and displacement of the shadow. But we, as a civilization, don't know anything about it. And so you have a handful of people who have looked at it very deeply, starting with Carl Jung, and then some other Jungians that have come after him that have added to it. But mainly that's been sitting on the shelf. Academia doesn't talk about it. The society doesn't generally talk about it because by its nature, it's out of phase with our normal consciousness. And so, to deal with it is to admit that we have a whole other lower, more primitive, more wounded, more base side to ourselves, and that it's getting in the way of our genius and our destiny, but that to work with it is such a big commitment. It's a lifestyle, and it seems scary. And we don't have there's not anything really in our tradition that helps us to understand this, because in our Christian tradition, we've basically put the shadow into the role of the devil, and we've kind of, projected it out there, and we're not seeing it as being part of ourselves. So it's not really in our tradition, but so we're suffering through it, right? We're suffering through all these cycles of, personal and collective cycles of shadow projection and hysteria. And we're just destroying ourselves externally. And then we're also developing all these syndromes and pathologies and all of this. And we have all these, it's just really building now, especially in America, but all over the place, it's really building now. And so we have all these internal problems, and these are all caused by shadow repression. I mean, the shadow and shadow repression isn't the one answer to all destructiveness in the human condition, but it is a huge part of that. And so, so here we are. And so we have this massive need for this understanding, but we have so few people who are investigating this and who are really understanding this at a deep level. And so, and I didn't ask to go into this field. This was just something this is just kind of part of my, part of my path. I mean, I'm a musician and an audio engineer, but I'm also autodidactic, and I dabble in all kinds of different areas. And this was just something that I was just always trying to understand. What is behind evil? What's the nature of evil? And what's going on there? Why do we just destroy ourselves so needlessly and unconsciously? And then I had my own little dark night of the soul about 20 years ago, and I had to start investigating my personal shadow. And I started with Robert Johnson's book, Owning Your Own Shadow. And it was then, once I started getting into the Jungian system, and then I got into Robert Moore and others, and it was then that I realized, okay, these things fit together. The shadow is the internal side, and evil, so-called, is the external side. And it's a little bit deeper than that, but I'll just leave that right there. And so then I started tying it together and all of that, and I just really was on this. Now, that had been going on, and then I met Melissa Mari, and I had actually known Melissa for a few years because she's also a singer, musician, just the most amazing, prolific artist, really. And I had already known her. I'd done some audio engineering work for her before, for a few years prior, and we'd had some great conversations. But then we really started having really deep conversations and going for nature walks in about early 2013. And that's when everything kind of clicked. And we realized that we both were at a time in our lives. I was 43, she was 50. And we were both in a time in our lives where we had enough practice studying ourselves, in some kind of a way in the past. We were both very introspective. We were both naturally just kind of psychoanalyzing ourselves for years prior. But once we got together, we realized, okay, we have in each other an appropriate partner who can help us really deepen this inner work. And it wasn't just a rational thing. It was just a natural. I mean, we were soulmates, and I say we were because Melissa isn't with us anymore, and she passed away of cervical cancer, and just early this year, in January of this year, 2025. And I'll talk about that in a minute. And then that whole thing of having to process the grief of losing Melissa and all that. But just for now, our relationship started, and it just clicked, and we just started downloading. It's kind of like channeling, but it's more like how musicians or artists in general come up with material. It's just the creative process. You put people together who are on the same page, and they're in this creative psychosocial field, and the unconscious produces all kinds of material. This is how you get the greatest art. And so Melissa and I, we were used to doing that. And we got together and we just started creating all kinds of new ideas that were coming to us that helped to explain the shadow or its relationship to evil, and then also understand our own shadow material, our own wounds, our own intergenerational junk that was passed to us. And we just started unwinding all this stuff. And we recorded all our conversations, or not all, but a huge amount of them. I mean, I have thousands of hours, literally, of us. I mean, it must be over 1,000, hours of us talking on audio or video. And so I'm actually making a movie right now about Melissa and our life together, and a lot of this will be explored in there, and you'll get to see, Melissa's background and her whole side of things. But so this relationship started, and then within about 2.5 years, we wrote this first book called Shadow Tech: Cracking the Codes of Personal and Collective Darkness. And this is what our original ideas were in here. And then skipping ahead 9 years, I put out this one, Transforming Darkness, a shadow work toolkit for the red-pilled initiate. And this one sort of clarifies what was in there, and then also adds some stuff where I integrated the Jungian shadow into Ken Wilber's 4 quadrants model, and I put it through the 4 quadrants, and then I put out like 30 shadow work practices through all 4 quadrants. And so, but this just happened. This just came out, like a 1.5 years ago or something. But so, our relationship. This is as important as all of the theory on the shadow. I mean, the theory on the shadow is just absolutely important. Our society needs this information. This is the biggest invisible elephant in the living room, and it's yucky medicine that people don't want to take, but it's medicine that we have to take. We have to take this to evolve. And so, I mean, I guess it happens at a personal level when you have to do the shadow work on yourself, but I think it also happens on a collective level when more and more people start talking about it. And so that's why I'm getting out there now and talking about this. I mean, I've been putting this material out. I've been writing books, and there's been a YouTube channel or 2, but I haven't really been pushing it because it was really still in development. And now that Melissa's not around, I feel like now is the time to show up and start really getting the conversation going and finding other people who are in, this community. This is going to be a small community, I understand, but I suspect that it's going to be, I can already see that it's growing, because I can already see people are talking about shadow work and people are starting to do it, and it's sort of at the basic level, but it's going to get deeper, and I don't know how long it's going to take, but I know I'm part of the conversation, and so that's why I'm up here talking about it now. But with the relationship, so now I have this experience now where I was in this relationship with this incredibly prolific, creative relationship with this absolutely amazing, mystical, shamanic, spiritual artist woman, and who was incredibly courageous. She had more shadow junk than I probably do. And she had a more difficult childhood than I did. And so I think she was more, I think some of the weight was more on her, but she was also incredibly strong, courageous, and stoic. And she was able to handle any amount of internal conflict. She was able to. So whatever showed up in the relationship, whatever that was shadowy or whatever came through our quote unquote pain bodies, whatever came from our dissociated parts or our complexes, or whatever model you want to use to explain that, we talked about it, we put it on the table, we dissected it, we integrated it, we did all kinds of shadow work practices, emotional clearing practices, and all kinds of things that I can talk about to process and integrate our shadow material. We looked at everything through the Jungian system and through other systems. I mean, we were on it. And she was just there the whole time. And it was just this alchemical relationship where you start the fire and then you just let it go. And we would say, never break the container. Never break the container. Never break up. Never wimp out. Just stay with the process no matter what until whatever happens, happens. And we created music. We created a band called the O1 Experience, this progressive rock metal band, concept band, where we took all our ideas and we put them into the band. We made the books. We played out. We did all kinds of stuff. It was incredibly prolific. And then Melissa got cancer, and we thought that we were going to beat the cancer because we were so serious about the work. But then when that didn't happen, that was just a huge shock for me, because I realized that there's Michael Mead's understanding of your fate and your destiny, right? You have your destiny. Your destiny is your highest purpose, but your fate is related to that which you're dragging behind you, your garbage or your just the patterns and imprints that come with you that are going to be part of your life forever. And you're going to have to manifest your you're going to have to manifest your destiny despite your fate. So your fate is still going to be there. It's still going to be knocking at you. It's still going to be a burden on you, but then your destiny is going to squeeze out by way of that. And that's the alchemical gold that's going to come out of the process of working with the prima materia, your psyche and your lower nature. And so that's what happened. And Melissa's destiny came through all of this work, because this work could not have been done without her. She was the other side of the circuit. But her fate was the cancer that was in the family, and that she had already had before, and that had come back, and that was not able to be cured. That was the fate side of it. But the destiny was manifest. The gold was created. And now I'm here, and now it's like, wow, okay, well, this is a massive. Now I have this. I mean, I already knew it was a mission, but now it's an absolute obligation. And I still feel so sad about losing her. And I've just been crying every day about it and working on the film. I'm working on this film about her, and it just brings up all this stuff, and it's so hard. And I feel so sad over her passing. And the only thing that makes me feel better, where I actually feel, okay, all right, is when I realize that is to stay on the mission, on her work, and getting her work and her perspective out into the world, and taking what we developed together and bringing it to the level where it needs to go to. And I can't control what needs to happen with this. That's not my business, really. But it is my business to put this material out into the world. And there's not just this theory and all of that, but there's the music and all her other music. And that's another part of what I do, is that I'm working through all her, she has so much music, and I'm producing it and putting out her music as well. And so pulling out stuff out of the closet that was been stuff from the 80s and stuff like that. I'm putting all that out there. But so that's what makes me feel better. That's when I realize, okay, everything's on track. Just stay with the mission, stay with the work, share the work, find the community, find the other people who are capable of doing this kind of deep work and of talking about this and understanding this. Get with those people and just move forward. And so, while of course continuing to do the work on myself, because it never ends. It's constantly ongoing. So I think that's good. I can see now I've talked for 20 minutes. I was hoping to talk for 10 minutes, but I'm very long-winded, and I just scratched the surface there. But anyway, so I think that's good, and you have that background, and I'll put the books and everything else in the description below, and you can always just contact me, shadowtechalchemy@gmail.com. You can text or call my phone, area code 925-305-1616. I'm on Facebook under Colin E. Davis. I've got another account too, but the one that deals with this is Colin E. Davis. I'm not really on any other social media. The YouTube page is Shadow Tech Alchemy. And I look forward to talking to you, and thanks for listening.